Hey, welcome back to the podcast. I am Justin Stacy,
I'm Nate Thomas.
I'm Josh Matney.
and tonight we are talking about the Flintstones movie from the 90s. So, uh, it wouldn't be first impressions. I obviously watched this movie a ton growing up, but I have to admit, there's a lot of things in the movie that I did not catch when I was younger, that I guess my mind just wasn't mature enough to catch. And I seen it this time, so it was it was a very pleasant rewatch for me. And Flintstones, I think I've mentioned before, but the Flintstones is probably at least my number one or two cartoon of all time. So Gumby and my shirt for the listeners, I have a Gumby shirt on only because I didn't have a Flintstone shirt to wear, and Gumby's in that list too, one or two, maybe three of cartoons. So I love the Flintstones, and I love this movie.
I thought it was, I'll admit, I watched it when it came out. I was probably a sophomore or junior in high school. I remember going to see it. I remember enjoying it. But when you're in high school, you're too cool for that stuff.
Right.
Keep in mind, it's either the year before or the year after Jurassic Park came out. I mean, keep that in mind. Those are the dinosaurs we wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
But watching the Flintstones now, it was like the animated show brought to life.
Yeah.
And I know we'll dive a little deeper in it, but I enjoyed it tremendously.
My biggest thing is I thought the first act was pretty funny, but then after that, it just kind of slowed down for me. I just couldn't. I kind of got bored a little bit. Honestly, I don't remember a whole lot about this, and I owned the VHS back in when I was a kid. I would watch it, but it's like the first 20 minutes I remember, but after that, I'm just like I don't remember any of this. It's almost like watching for the first time.
So what you're saying, Josh, is that you did not have a yabba dabba good time.
I've seen a lot worse. I think with with this movie, the casting was great. The props were good, but I think the script was just not that funny.
We'll get into it. Sit back, relax, put your feet up as we open a bottle of Popculture.
We're gonna talk about some really cool stuff. Well, Josh, Nate, and I, we're gonna blow this thing up. We're gonna talk about the movies you love. And if you don't, well, that's just tough. But we're gonna talk about shows that are awesome. You'll say, whoa, when we talking about Blossom. This will be your one and only stop for everything nerdy in a bottle of culture.
All right, let's jump right into why, Josh, you hate the Flintstones.
I don't hate the Flintstones. The cartoon's great.
That's not the way we're going to tell it that you said.
Yeah, and I mean, it seems like you hate John Goodman as well.
John Goodman's one of my favorite actors. I just think this, he plays a perfect Fred Flintstone. The casting is top tier for a 90s show because you have Rick Moranis, I can't forget
Halle Berry,
and you have the girl who played in Cleopatra.
Elizabeth Taylor.
Yeah, great casting. The look of the dinosaurs really matched the animated series, but I just felt like the jokes were just kind of meh. Now, as a kid, I can see this being kind of funny, but now as watching it as an adult now, I have a different viewpoint of it because I don't think I really watched it that much as a kid. I think I was more interested in the cartoon than I was a live action movie.
I wonder if you went back and watched the cartoon, if you would have the same gripes. I feel like you would, because I do feel like what Nate said, this is the perfect live action imagining of the cartoon. It is spot on to the cartoon, I feel like. So I think you would have those same gripes about the cartoon now as an adult.
I did think John Goodman, Rick Moranis as Barney, who's an Elizabeth Perkins as Wilma, and Rosie O'Donnell as Betty Rubble, they were not acting. They were doing 90-minute impressions of the original voice actors. And that's not an insult, although it sounds like one. Like Rick Moranis did a spot-on impression of the guy who voiced Barney. Rosie O'Donnell did a spot-on voice impression of the lady who was Betty, and so on. That I enjoyed. Now, I wouldn't enjoy it in a series of films, but it was very much a love letter to the TV show.
It really was. So the original voice actor of Barney was Mel Blanc. Blanc. However you pronounce it.
Blanc.
Yeah, and he did the voice of basically everything, pre 1980s. It seems like, I think they called him the man of 1,000 voices because he did so many different cartoon characters. So fun fact, he did the voice of Dino in this movie. And this movie came out 5 years after he died. And what they did is they just took clips from the original cartoon of Dino and put it on here. And that's, of course, Mel Blanc. So just a little fun fact there. But let's jump into the synopsis because I forgot to do that for the thing. Yeah, but I completely forgot last time to do it for the thing. So I do want to just do a quick synopsis. So big-hearted, dim-witted factory worker Fred Flintstone lends money to his friend Barney Rubble so that he can adopt a baby. As thanks, Barney swaps his IQ test with Fred during an executive search program. After getting promoted, however, Fred becomes embroiled in the dastardly scheming of his boss, Cliff Vandercave, who enlists his secretary, Sharon Stone, to seduce Fred, angering Fred's wife, Wilma. That's the Google synopsis. I feel like there was a little more that it could have been said here, but that's what Google says.
That's not a great one.
No, it's
really not.
There was a lot with them trying to sell out the workers for steam power or something.
Yeah. So here's another fun fact. Sharon Stone, the character, was originally cast to be played by Sharon Stone, the actor.
Oh, really?
And she turned it down. Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of funny.
I thought the play on words with her last name being Stone was a cute joke.
Well, I mean, the Flintstones, this movie was full of cute jokes.
Yeah.
Steven Spielberg or something like that.
Yeah. And Tar Wars.
Yeah, I loved it.
I did. And that is one of the things that I had not caught when I was a kid, probably because I hadn't even watched Star Wars then, so I didn't know to catch it. But when that was the first thing I caught was like Tar Wars, Gorge Lucas.
Yeah.
I think that's amazing.
My favorite joke of the entire movie was the band, the BC-52s.
Nice.
For real, I laughed out loud. And that's the dumbest joke.
It is.
I laughed and was like, come on, does anybody really listen to the B-52s other than Love Shack at this point? No. And that's only at parties. But the BC-52s, that's clever.
It is clever.
Anyway.
There are a lot of clever jokes in this. So one thing you touched on earlier is this came out in the height of the dinosaur craze of the 90s.
Oh, yeah.
Like we had just got Jurassic. Well, so when did Jurassic Park come out, Josh?
The summer of '93. The fact that I know that is sad.
Well, I knew you would.
It's not sad.
I knew you would. So summer of '93. This came out in '94, so it's just been a year later.
And also, Steven Spielberg had a couple other movies like that was dinosaur related or creature related on that his name was attached to. And I think actually John Goodman was also one of the voices for one of those films too.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's called We're Back, a Dinosaur Story.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember the poster for that.
Yeah.
I remember that too. Yeah. So, yeah, like obviously it seemed like every movie wanted to tap into that dinosaur money because that was money in the 90s. What I appreciated here though is they did have animatronics and stuff like Jurassic Park, but they made it to where it looked more Flintstone-y, looked more cartoony than it would just actual dinosaurs. Yeah. And I read that the animation style, like the CGI that you have with some of the dinosaurs, like the cat in the closing scene was complete CGI. Some of Dino was CGI. that this was sort of the first type of 90s movie that really tried to do full CGI on animals.
Oh,
And
makes sense.
yeah, and they said, it was very costly then, very high cost to do that. I think they said that there was a 40. It cost $45 million to make this movie or something like that, and a big portion of that budget was just the animation and the I guess animatronics and stuff like that. Now, a lot of the puppets I read in the credits was done with the Jim Henson Studios.
They look
know
like the creature place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So they definitely use them, and I think Jim Henson does the best Muppets. Period. Like that, it's just amazing.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
When you go back and look historically at all the things that Jim Henson, was it Creature Factory? That's not right, but it's something like
that. Yeah.
The things that they've had their hands on over the years, it blows your mind.
Yeah.
He was before his time. No matter when he came along, he would have been ahead of his time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he did amazing things.
Agreed. So something else, just watching this as an adult, that you notice it's kind of like, this doesn't make any sense. This is not logical at all. One of which is they called Dino a dog. Clearly not a dog. But, and again, it's just the whole, I guess, the trope, the whole paradox thing of being a modern Stone Age family. You got to take modern aspects and put it into the Stone Age, and that's why they do it. But, I mean, so he was what, a Stegosaurus or something, Josh? Like what type of...
I would say a Bronchiosaurus or something. I don't know.
He was... I don't think he was a velociraptor.
He was the one that ran into Fred. The other two were behind him waiting to take him out. Have you not seen the uncut version?
That's the one I need to watch.
That's right.
I don't know what it was. But I was pretty good at clearly. He's a velociraptor.
And something else just about the Flintstone Mobile, which apparently is called the Caveman Mobile as well. Read that as just a fun fact. But the Flintstone Mobile has no problem at all going uphill without any effort.
Right. Right.
It's logical.
So now you can buy dinosaurs and man living side by side, and you can buy all the modern conveniences done in so, but you cannot buy the foot-powered car going uphill without hesitation.
It's just too much.
That's where you draw the line.
That's the line in the sand for me.
I see where you are. All right. I thought this was a documentary. What happened here? You mean this isn't found footage?
Oh gosh.
One of my favorite jokes was like the garbage disposal. It was a pig, and they just replaced the pig.
I have one of those at my house. He's a 100-pound cane corso. He thinks he'll eat it. But I haven't replaced him yet.
Also, I know this is sort of a Flintstones thing in general, not necessarily to this movie, but the level of that they make their animals work is on the verge of animal abuse. I feel like, especially with the way they treated that pig.
With it being so fantastical, is that a word? And we're going to say it is.
Yeah.
You can avoid all of that. Now, if the animals looked like real life animals, you would have had controversy, like even in the 90s.
Yeah.
So I'm with you because you think, man, look how he tried to choke the life out of that bird.
Yeah.
If I'm walking my dogs outside and somebody thinks I'm jerking them too hard, I get a visit from the police. It's never happened, but that's the world we live in.
The Dictabird, which that bird was hilarious.
Oh yeah, one of the highlights of the film.
Absolutely.
I know we haven't been on the best. We haven't had the best relationship, but let me just tell you this.
Yeah. Yeah. So here, another fun fact about the Dictabird. I don't know if either of you recognize the voice actor that played the Dictabird, but I did immediately, and I did not as a kid, but I did immediately now. And that is, I've got a note here. One second. Harvey Corkum, and he did the voice of Gazoo, the Great Gazoo.
Oh,
Harvey Korman was the tall guy on the Carol Burnett show.
Oh,
Yeah,
Did not know
he
that.
and Tim. No, I want to say Tim Curry, but that's not him. And Tim Conway were a comedy team, and man, they were funny. They'd be funny today.
Nice.
I'm showing my age.
I mean, yeah, like there was a couple of the jokes that were kind of like not great to me, but I did like that it kind of touched on a lot of things like blue collar,
Right.
classism.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I mean, even like what happens when you sort of become a new class person and then you kind of almost like forget where you came from.
You change.
Like Fred and Barney's relationship, which has always, I remember, kind of always been a thing in the show.
It was.
And I don't know, like, and now of course another one like I never thought as a kid was like adopting a kid because Betty and Barney couldn't, have a kid. So, I mean, I'm not saying this was too adult for kids, but a lot of it did go over my head when I was young. But I mean,
for kids, it's bright colors, shiny, bright colors, loud noises. For those of us that are a little older, like it's not inconceivable that in the next few years, your little one might sit down and watch it with you. Yeah. Let's just pretend.
Now I could watch this with Corbin. Like if he was one, like I wouldn't say no to this ever, but like, I mean, I don't know. I just thought it was funnier when I was a kid, but when I rewatch it, just seemed like, I don't know. It just seemed like I kind of forgot all of
your
this.
sense of humor changes when you become an adult. So, it's understandable. But
that's what happened when you watch South Park at a young age.
Yeah. The critics actually blasted this movie back in the 90s. They hated it.
I'm shocked.
Shocked, right? Now it was a huge box office success.
Yes.
So the critics were clearly wrong on that, but the critiques that they were giving it was that this is too adult for kids. So basically, just what you said, Josh, that you don't know that as a kid you're going to get some of this stuff because a lot of the themes it's just adult.
Yeah,
which I appreciate. I think because Mr. Rogers would do adult themes, and that's what I appreciate about Mr. Rogers. I think the Flintstones did it as well.
Well,
even the cartoon,
it doesn't have to be so dumbed down that it's just like just outrageously silly. Like you can make a pretty decent, like smart kids film with good topics.
That's right.
I mean, I'm just saying this was pretty. I mean, this one did a decent job at trying it. I just didn't think it was that super funny, but like I did appreciate that the themes it was trying to go for, because I think even like the Simpsons would even touch on like classism a lot in their shows.
Yeah.
Well,
and that was a thing in the 90s because like a lot of of course a lot of shows and movies touched on it.
Yeah, I like when cartoons or movies like this go into something in the political realm that affects us today. And classism, I have no issue with it. Me either. I think it's completely relevant. There's a Flintstones comic. I think it's more of a graphic novel, but it is completely political. Like every issue is something politics based on today. Yes.
How have I missed that?
I don't know. It's really good. So I have it somewhere. If I can find it, you can borrow it or whatever, but it's so good. It's one of my favorite comics. So that's pretty good stuff. But yeah, go ahead.
Can I just say, I don't think today people realize what a big deal is. Elizabeth Taylor was in the Flintstones. Now, this is a lady who's won Oscars and has been in legendary films and was a child actress and then was like the queen of Hollywood. This was her last role.
That's right. Yeah.
And apparently she loved it. Look, I know that as actors age, a lot of times they just want to be in stuff that they enjoy instead of trying to chase awards, and they should. But I was amazed by just how she dove into the part.
Yep.
And I know
she did a really good job.
Even when I was a kid, Elizabeth Taylor was considered one of the old Hollywood people. So I can't imagine for a younger generation that she doesn't mean anything to them. But I'm amazed by that.
And a lot of movies, just because they don't do well with critics, I mean, they eventually do find their crowd. I mean, that happened with Mallrats for me. Like I love that movie Mallrats, but like it did horrible at the box office. It didn't really do well with like critics either, but it found an audience. And I think with a lot of these sort of like movies like this, and they do find their audience. And they did the same thing with Scooby-Doo. I didn't really care much for the live action
Me
version,
either.
but it was kind of like it found its crew, you know.
So here's a question: was this the first live action of a cartoon?
I don't think so. I wouldn't think so, really, though.
I mean, I wouldn't think so either, but I can't think of anything that's before this that was live action. That was a cartoon originally.
I can't come up with one, but that doesn't mean there's not one.
When did that god awful Mario movie come out?
Oh, I bet that was before.
It may have been before, but it wasn't from a cartoon. It was from a video game.
It was from a video game. Yeah. So I don't know if that counts, but it was awful.
Well, and the Ninja Turtles.
Ninja Turtles would have been before. That was.
It was like
that was in the early '90s for the movies, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have been, I guess, and obviously those are great movies.
Not for nothing, but that first Ninja Turtles movie, it stands up today.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I think we should review those at some point.
Sounds good. Next week.
But yeah, so I don't know. I felt like this was just, if it's not the original live action, it's one of the first that's in that realm, and it's such a good job of being live action. So,
and if it is like one of the first few live action films, you know, for from a cartoon, it kind of makes sense, because trying to do a live action adaptation of a cartoon can be kind of difficult, because not everything translates really well.
That's true.
The live action screen,
and expensive.
Yeah.
When it hadn't been that long since the Flintstones cartoon had aired. What did it air in the late 60s?
It was the 60s, and honestly, you know, it went through generations. So, you know, the 70s had its own, 80s had the Flintstone Kids.
And it aired on TBS, the original series.
Yes. It still airs. So it's never left us.
I can see it being controversial and being a risk.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say this. I know we've all talked about it. John Goodman was perfect as Fred Flintstone.
Oh, yeah.
He was.
The casting was good.
I'm with you, Josh.
The entire casting. I read that Spielberg basically put this movie on hold. This movie was being thought about, talked about, written in 1989.
Sure.
And he put this movie on hold, waiting on John Goodman to say yes. Because so, you know, John Goodman, early 90s, he was one of the biggest actors there was.
Yeah.
You know, and he basically said he is the actor to play Fred, and this movie's not happening without him. And he even made a public statement saying that John Goodman is my Fred. And that was before John Goodman had signed a contract or anything. So it persuaded John Goodman, persuaded him publicly to sign on to do that.
I love it.
It's a brilliant move.
Yeah. He never did come back for the sequel, because they did do a sequel a couple years later.
It wasn't a sequel. It was a prequel. It was a prequel.
Okay.
Yeah. And no, he did none of
Rock Vegas.
Yes, and none of the originals came back. It was actually very critically, like, it was positively critically reviewed. Like it was the critics were a fan of it, and it bombed at the box office. It just did garbage. It was garbage.
Critics.
And I watched it and I didn't like it either.
Yeah.
So it really does, like, casting really does matter. And they probably could have took that same script with the original actors, and it would have been probably better.
Mm-hmm.
You know. So
now I want to look and see who's in that. That's what I'm doing while we're talking.
I know one of the Baldwins was in it, because I remember.
He played Barney.
Mark
I'm not a huge fan of
Addy,
him.
Kristen Johnston, Jane Krakowski, Joan Collins. A lot of people. I have no.
A lot of people, but I don't. In the year 2000, I don't know that any of those were very well known, and that may have been a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the 90s was like this cast was just a good time period, a good time for, like, because you got John Goodman, you got Rick Moranis, and all these people are I wouldn't say at the height of their career, but they're very well known.
Well, Halle Berry was just beginning her career.
Yeah.
This was one of the first things she probably ever did. But yeah, Rick Moranis had been around for a while. You know, he was Ghostbusters and Honey, I Shrunk the Everything.
Yeah,
you know, a bunch of those. And so he was killing it. So yeah, the actors played a role in the popularity of this. So here's something that I noticed. just being the adult, that Halle Berry's character, Sharon Stone, I felt for a 90s movie, an early 90s movie, was very sexy. And maybe it is similar in the cartoon where they have sexy characters and you just don't notice it because in cartoon form. But I just felt like that's pretty sexy for a PG, kids, supposedly kids, live adaptation of a cartoon. What was your thoughts? I mean,
I thought it was intentionally designed to be over the top.
Yeah,
like the music that played when she'd walk into the room.
Yeah.
And the whole 90s was a different era of what was appropriate to put in.
That's true.
Because, I mean, look at Nickelodeon. You have Ren and Stimpy coming out as a
that's a good
show. Point. I mean, I'm not surprised, that this was in it.
That's true. And she says this quote. I put this quote down. "Feel free to use me however you see fit."
Right.
Now, as a kid, I would have not thought anything about that. And I'm like, wow, that's a statement in this movie.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's, that one is one of those that's in there for the adults and the kids.
That's true.
Which I do appreciate, because sometimes it's kind of nice to have those like little hidden adult jokes for the adults in the room.
Now, I'm confident that all the old cartoons of Flintstones, Jetsons, and stuff are probably riddled with these type of things that you just never noticed as a kid, but they're for the adults. So
don't do it.
So here's another one of those paradoxes. Like maybe it's over that line that we talked about that just kind of annoyed me, thinking logically, and that is all of the homes have electricity. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. Here's what I'm not fine with: the fact that the street lights still have to be gaslit. I mean, they had they had the guy out there lighting it. It was powered by gas. Now, why?
You can only work the animals so long.
That's true. They're working the animals for the electricity in the house. They can't do it on the street as well.
I mean, that's why the steam power is the future of the power. You have to invest. Right. You have to move forward.
That's right. You need to watch the movie again, Justin. You missed it.
Clearly,
the guy who plays Cliff, he was in the original Dune.
Really?
Kyle MacLachlan. Yeah,
I did not. I totally forgot about that. Just a random thing there.
Speaking of Cliff, and speaking of Steam, did you all catch who he's supposed to be in terms of our actual history?
I don't think I did.
Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt.
Oh,
made his career on Steam.
That day, I'm like,
no. So Vanderbilt, and Vanderbilt made his riches off of steam power, basically.
So that was. I don't know how that went over my head, but yeah, it totally did.
I knew it. So just by the name, I knew it had to be Vanderbilt. So then I just did a little quick history search of how Vanderbilt got his millions or whatever. That was it. It was steam. So that's why it was relevant. So there's a lot of
the thing about I realized I do remember this as a cartoon. There was a laugh track in the cartoon, and the thing about laugh tracks, they always sort of program you to know when to laugh. So I wonder if you was to take away the laugh track on the cartoons, would they be as funny as I remember? Also,
that's a good observation. I don't know that I ever caught that, but there is.
I remember the laugh track being in Scooby-Doo and a lot of those Hanna-Barbera shows, and
the Flintstones aired in prime time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep,
it was actually what the first animated sitcom or not sitcom, but show to air in prime time.
I think so.
Yeah.
I read when I was after I watched it, I went out somewhere. And the scene, if you watch the show, the bowling scenes with Fred, he would literally stand on his toes and walk and bowl.
Twinkle toes.
Yes, thank you. And they were going to cut that out of the movie until somebody reminded a producer or a director, listen, you've got to have that in. People are going to expect to see that. And it's funny.
Yeah,
it's funny. It's a great callback. I also, and you guys probably didn't think this was funny like I did. I loved when they were doing the aptitude tests at work and they're chiseling.
Yeah.
And that whole thing was funny when they're trying to erase and whatnot. But then what do they put them in? Envelopes.
Yep.
Yeah, just regular envelopes. That should not be funny, but it was.
But it was. I wonder if they, if in the 90s, I feel like the school systems were starting to really adopt the SOLs and aptitude tests. So if that was the reason why they put it on there, just show how ridiculous this is. that we're giving a VP spot based on an aptitude test. Like, in what world do you do that?
I wish it was this one because I test well, but I have no qualification.
I got complete test anxiety.
Yeah, and it was so.
Don't worry, I'll put your name on mine. We'll be like Barney and Fred.
What job position is this?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. I got your back.
Yeah, one of you are getting VP spot, and the other's getting fired.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, pal.
Yeah, that was so horrible.
Yeah.
First day on the job, you got to fire Rebel.
Yeah. And it was clearly a show.
Yeah.
That's a Flintstones show. I enjoyed it. I mean, it's not in my top 10 or 50 movies of all time, but I would watch it again if I called it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good family movie. Like, it's not the worst thing ever. I've seen a lot worse than this, but I mean, it's a pretty, as an adaptation for its time, it's pretty good. I don't think they could have done this with the Jetsons or anything. I think Flintstones would have been a easier show to do it, especially coming off the Jurassic Park craze.
Right.
Yeah.
I still don't know how a Jetsons movie would work.
I don't either.
And I'm shocked we haven't seen one.
I'm shocked we haven't seen one either. I did obviously like all of these sort of sticking points to, I guess, to capitalism, to corporations, just rich people that they're pointing out here. One of the quotes that I put, so you had Vander Cave and Mr. Slate. They're in that meeting. That's the one Fred's late to. And he says, I picked up a nail, and then he shows his foot. So, but they're talking about, how to increase profits and all these automation, basically. And that's every industry. You're automating away jobs, but to increase profits. So it's showing this is how corporate America works. But, I like that Mr. Slate almost had morals. He was taking up for the workers to begin with. He's like, we're going to have to fire a lot of people. And he's like, what if I could increase your profits threefold? And he's like, well, I'll miss them.
I did that.
Well, I miss them.
Too bad about those people.
Yeah. And I feel like that's pretty true when it comes to our corporate overlords. It's always profit.
I mean, it's all they look at is numbers, and they'll exploit you until something else comes along, and then it's like, okay, we're getting rid of you.
Yeah. And I liked, I think it was that same scene where Fred was trying to matter in this, and he speaks up and he's like, I hate to burst your bubble, but if you build homes this small, who's going to live in them?
Right. Right. That's his Derek Zoolander moment. Yeah. Are these houses for tiny people?
Oh, goodness. That's funny. So yeah, there was a lot of the name changing puns. There was Snob Auto was one of my favorite things.
Oh yeah.
And then you had Rock Donald's. Think of how much money McDonald's made off this movie.
Oh,
they probably had the toys.
I think they did.
They did. They had the toys, and in the 90s, every movie that come out would have a special edition glass.
Oh, that's right.
So they absolutely had that. There was even commercials with the cast from this movie, and they even changed the name of McDonald's to Rock Donald's in the commercial. Brilliant.
Wow.
This is brilliant marketing.
I mean, McDonald's and probably Burger King were like the top tier toy,
when it comes to toys, yeah.
Kids meal toys,
Do they still do that?
I think they still do. I really
guess.
don't know.
Yeah, they do. Well, I know that McDonald's does, because when they did the 50th, what was it, the 50th anniversary of Disney World or something. They had those toys last year, and we would go and get kids meals just to get the toys. We got a bunch of them.
I like how he says "we" when he's the one that wants them. Did you catch that, Josh?
Oh, well, Josh, it's Josh shit too. It's me and
I did
Lisa.
too.
Oh,
Yeah. I would legit meant we.
Like it was more so for him and Lisa, and like they're like just.
Oh yeah, put the blame on us. Yeah.
I see.
I want to totally sell you out here.
Oh, I approve.
I don't know. I like stuff like that.
Nate promised me a 3+ raise on my salary here, so
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
I'm the same way. I just like to give Justin a hard time.
So, something else about the Flintstones, this movie in particular, but I think the Flintstones in general, probably old cartoons in general, a lot of tropes and stereotypes that you probably you wouldn't have noticed, even if you're an adult in the 90s, you wouldn't probably have cared or noticed. But now that we are, in 2022, you do notice a lot of, I think, negative views towards women in this, just being basically the whole stereotype of, women don't really work. They stay home and they just spend all the money. Like there was a lot of jokes like that there.
Are you saying
where
that's not true? I want to make sure you're clear.
I'm clear that's not what women do.
So I can get away with that joke. I'm the divorced guy. You guys can't make that joke.
Yeah. But there was one scene where Wilma and Betty, they go and they're buying all kinds of stuff, and I don't know, something happens and they're like, or Betty points out that the price tag on this thing is huge, and then Wilma's like, "We'll just charge it," and they both say it, together, and I felt like that was just a pun on women, and I was like, I don't think that you can do that in 2022. Like, a
lot of humor, it does kind of, some of it doesn't age well after a while. Like at the time, you don't notice it. I mean, like I can say the same thing with a lot of comedies that I watch. And go back and look and like, okay, that I still think it's funny, but definitely not for 2022 standards.
Comedy is definitely different now.
I mean, if you go back and watch like a lot of the old Looney Tunes and stuff, a lot of the same humor is kind of like that too. Like there's, and some was even like removed because it was considered way too risque.
Yeah, and then the negative view they had on Barney being a busboy. He's like a busboy. Like I mean, I guess in context, it was meant to just show that Fred's being a rich douche right here.
Well, wasn't that kind of the thing also in the 90s was like, don't go to the workforce and be like a waiter or a busboy or something. Like, you need to go to college. You need.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I feel like there was an image there that if you were a waiter or a busboy, quote unquote, that you're negative, you're below, you're something lesser than. And me personally, I don't view any of those jobs as being that. I definitely respect waiters and busboys. So, I felt like there was some of that in there.
Except nobody wakes up in the morning and says, "I can't wait to be a busboy today."
Right.
I can't wait to be a waiter. And Barney was a family man. So for him to go from making a living for his family to being a busboy, it was I don't want to say shameful, but it was a big deal.
It wasn't. It was a demotion. It was a demotion.
Like it was like a big lifestyle change, and didn't they have to move? And like they had to leave their home.
They were homeless for a while.
Yeah.
In the movie. Yeah.
But I didn't think it was talking about being a busboy. I mean, lots of people start out as busboys, but Barney was middle-aged.
I mean, we do glorify like the idea of you start out as something like a busboy, then you become like, let's say, a top tier chef or something like that.
Yeah.
But you still, we kind of still built a society where we kind of look down on those type of jobs.
Yeah, I think that was the point I was getting at, is that even today, like the generations we grew up in, really glorified, and I think some of it's rightly so, the idea of going to college and bettering your education to be able to get a good paying job. But I think in retrospect, because we did that, now we have made so many jobs menial and not cared about, and because they're not cared about, they're not going to be they're not going to be paying maybe as high as they could, or they could be paying high, but people don't care about them because we raised a generation to not care about them. So I think and that's something that Mike Rowe talks about on a bunch of different stuff that he's been doing lately, is that, you know, we really raised a whole generation to think lowly of trade jobs and labor jobs.
And to
now,
think lowly of entry level jobs. They're entry level
Yes.
for a reason.
yeah,
I mean,
So-
I'm not an elitist, I'm not a classist, but at the same time, if I don't feel bad. I don't feel bad for saying I don't want to be a waiter. I don't want to be a busboy.
Right.
I'd be a terrible busboy or waiter, just for the record. Because they say I want you to carry this tray. My hands are little. I couldn't do it. But
yeah, and you know, the problem is somebody's got to do it, and
That's
a
right.
lot of, you know, and the problem is, another problem is a lot of jobs that start out as, you know, when we think of minimum wage jobs, we think, I guess what they were kind of meant to be when they started out with the whole idea of minimum wage was, this is something that's going to be part-time jobs for, you know, teenagers, late teenagers in high school. But
it hasn't stayed that way.
it didn't stay that way. And because it didn't stay that way, you now have a problem, because you have older adults that are trying to raise families on it.
That's right.
Mhm.
And you either have to adjust now the minimum wage jobs to be able to allow them to support it, which is what most people want, I think, or you have to change the culture to say, no, this is not who we should be hiring. But then you have to, I mean, you basically have to convince corporations to once again go with teenagers. And I don't think any corporation wants to hire a teenager now, regardless. Like, and I don't know if it's just a difference between what teens used to be versus now, but
Mhm.
I can't think of anyone that would choose a teenager over someone that's 30 years old and has a family.
Well, I
But-
mean, unless they know that they can hire strictly just part timers, because you know, if you're 30-some years old and you're like, they're going to look at that like, well, he's going to want benefits and full time. So, well, this teenager lives with his or her parents, so just hire them, work them 15, 20 hours a week if you're lucky. Like, that's fine. See, the company is still saving, but it's like they don't like the idea of, I mean, at least when I was in retail, they didn't like hiring full-time workers a lot.
I do wonder too if the culture has shifted such that, you know, teenagers are no longer really expected by their parents to get a job and or, you know, make their own wages, even, you know, if they're living with their parents, even as they're going through college. I feel like we've had a big shift in that they're no longer expected to really do that. You
Mhm.
know, it's more of a, you know, you can live with us as long as you need. You can, you know, we'll take care of you until you get that good job, that really good job. And
Yeah.
because of that, now these type of jobs have to backfill with really desperate people, desperate adults. And those are the ones that needs the most help. And they're not going to get it with the way our minimum wage system currently works. So I digress on that, I guess, but it's,
But you know, back to the whole jobs like busboy and waiter and whatever. Like, yeah, it's not your ideal job, but you know, if you're like a doctor, lawyer, whatever, I mean, yeah, you obviously may have a lot more stress than a busboy, but that doesn't give you the right to
right.
downplay them or anything like that. Because like
It was
it showed like what happens when classism is almost like blind to what it's like to be that low again, or you know, not low, but you know what I mean, like at that point again.
Yeah, it's interesting how quickly Fred and Wilma turned when they got money to being, you know, classist and elite, and not really remembering where they come from. So, you know, and I really don't think it would have happened in real life. It wouldn't happen that quick, but one would hope not. You know?
Oh, God, no.
But I think it proved the point that this is, you know, when you have money, when you're rich, it is easy, I think, to get blinders then, to not really understand struggles anymore. I wouldn't either.
I would not know.
I
You
wouldn't
see
either.
where all my money goes. I don't have any.
Yeah.
It's not funny.
So yeah, well, another funny line I thought in the movie was when, you know, the Rubbles, they were living with Fred and Wilma, and then they just got sick of their crap and decided at some point to move out. It's when Barney punched him. He's like, I got to punch out, and he knocked out Fred.
It was clever.
It was clever, and they even used the whole knockout scene from the Flintstones with the
Yeah.
They did, yeah. So I thought that was very clever. So then they move out, and then Wilma is obviously at this point. That's what it took for Wilma to kind of wake up and say, the way we're living is terrible. We're treating people terrible, and she was telling Fred, I don't need this. I don't need this. What I need is friends or the Rubbles. And he's like, there's 4,000 other people in this world. We can clearly find 4,000 other people. I think that's amazing.
It's so crazy how like materialistic some people can be, especially like during, a certain period like that. I mean, you're just like, you buy stuff you don't need. It's almost like it's like, oh, I got this because I can. It's like you're trying to show off, and it's like, what are you trying to prove, really? It's like, yeah, you got like this expensive vase, but it's just sitting there catching dust. Woo, big deal.
It's the idea of disposable income.
Yeah.
Fred and Wilma didn't have it.
And
then they had it. And it's, look, far be it from me or anybody else to tell people not to buy things they want.
There was actually a joke in the film I did like where the mob is chasing Fred and Barney is like in an ice cream truck. And he's like,
I'd forgotten
we're gonna like lynch him or something like that. And Barney's like, okay.
Okay. And then he tries to sell him the ice cream. And like, hey, do you know him? He's like, yeah, I used to be my best friend. He's like, well, I'm glad you filled us in. We were going to make a big mistake because I lynch them both.
I did think that was funny.
It was. Yeah, and I love the pig. I love that the pig, could talk at that point when they were in the cave. He was like, Flintstone, Flintstone. Oh goodness! But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of funny stuff in this. I feel like.
Yeah.
Like I remember the cartoon had
goes away.
Who was the alien? Gazoo.
Gazoo. It was the Great Gazoo.
Yeah, wasn't he like? I mean, but I guess he was in the prequel. I guess I think I do remember him being in the.
Okay, but
he may have been. I mean, really, in this movie, that was the Dictabird. Is the Gazoo? They even did the same type of jokes. Like Gazoo.
Oh, okay.
Well, Gazoo used to call Fred Dum Dum. And that's basically how the Dictabird was treating Fred. It's like I wrote down a quote from the Dictabird, and he's like, "You hate my bird guts, and I think you're dumber than mud."
That's how you should have closed the episode tonight. That's the perfect.
That was the perfect one. Oh goodness. But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. I mean, to sort of like the very end, where you have the invention of concrete. I was like, that's brilliant.
It's going to revolutionize everything.
That's brilliant. Yeah.
I also liked, I guess as we're getting ready to wrap up, I did like the jokes about the cavemen when they'd be like, this is the best thing, whatever, since man became erect or whatever. I'm sorry, guys. And it's the cavemen, the Cro-Magnon.
Yeah, it's the Neanderthals.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to come up with.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's funny.
It is. It really is.
You are fine. Not you guys, this dog. You guys are fine too, but you're not who I was talking to.
But yeah. So good stuff. I think we've talked this movie to death at this point pretty good. But
I've never talked
I enjoyed it
so much in my life.
I enjoyed it. All right, so now we need to come up with our next movie that we want to do. And I think Nate has already suggested something that we may all agree with. So let me see a show of hands. Who here wants to pick the next movie?
Oh,
Nate?
This guy.
Okay. Nate, whoa.
My youth group kids, when I would ask them a question, all right, guys, what about anybody want to volunteer to have this one kid be like, oh, and when you would talk, he'd be like, hey, and he's at point that his hand. And so you finally call on him, and then he wouldn't know the answer. But that's all. This is going to be a little off the wall. Why don't we watch all 3 of the live action Ninja Turtle movies from the early 90s?
Oh, wow.
They're all on Netflix. It would take less than 6 hours.
For one episode, 3 of the movies.
Well, because they all kind of go together, in my opinion.
They kind of do.
But now I'm not beating anybody up over it. We don't want to do that. Okay.
I enjoyed the first 2. I think the third one's more. I kind of like. Wait, which was the third one where they went back in time? Or
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was. I'm definitely game for it. You know, I'm
all,
trying to figure out.
All three of them together they're like 128, 131, 135. So that's basically less than 5 hours.
Okay,
so we can only do 2 or 1. It doesn't matter.
No, I think all 3 would go good together. I'm thinking of more time commitments in getting them watched. So, Josh, do you think you can find the time to get them 6 hours
I can at
worth
least
of
do
movies
the
watched?
first 2 for sure, because I don't think.
Well, do we want to just do the first 2 since the third one really doesn't have anything to do with the other 2?
We could.
I mean, it's in that line, but the first 2 are like part 1, part 2.
Yeah, because I actually remember having those together on VHS back in the day. And
is that listen, we have to do the second one because Vanilla Ice has that slamming "Go Ninja, Go Ninja, Go."
Wait, was he in the second one? I thought he was in the third one.
No.
Oh Lord.
No.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm ready to watch them right now.
Okay, so that's what we're going to do next is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 and 2.
The Secret of the Ooze.
Yes, that's going to be good.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
When we talked about it, I was like, "Oh, come on, that's perfect for this."
That's right. That's right. So a lot of the Nico figures. Have you been keeping up with like the Nico figures, action figures? So that is one of the, I guess, top of the line action figures right now that's coming out that's affordable, and they have some really good Ninja Turtle ones.
Beautiful. Anything beautiful. They do is beautiful, but I haven't seen the Turtles ones.
Yeah,
I mean, I have the Turtles Funko Pops with Splinter that I'll make sure to show next week or whenever we record tomorrow, yesterday, whatever.
But they have a Super Shredder one at Welcome Back Collectibles. So plug to Welcome Back Collectibles. You're going to have to tag Larry in this episode.
I will.
Plug to them in Tazewell, Virginia. It's an amazing retro style collectible toys. Just anything really. Everything, comics, anything you want, all retro. And they have a Super Shredder Nico. And I seen it the other day. Yeah, oh yeah. It's really, really good. All right. Well, that was some good stuff. So to close this, I have a quote from the Flintstones movie. And I would say it's the most tear-jerking quote of the movie. So this is Barney Rubble. Since I was just a lad of 10, I've had the very bestest friend. He may be big, he may be loud, so you'll never lose him in a crowd. But for my friend, the special part is what's behind his ribs, his heart. I owe my son to him, and now I stand before my peers and vow I'll pay him back someday, somehow. Good night, everybody. See ya. Thank you so much for tuning into the podcast. We hope that we were able to entertain you at least for a spell. If you see value in our craziness and want to continue supporting us, please follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our videos, and share our content.
Hold up, wait just a minute. What exactly is going on here?
Just a genius idea I had for the outro.
Yeah, Justin said it will help us catch a virus.
That's not what I said. I said go viral.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I understand the idea, but why wasn't I invited? Are we not a 3-man band?
Of course we are. You just had a lengthy role as the captain in Star Trek, and I thought you deserved a little break.
I thought you said Nate was getting a big head and needed to be brought down a peg.
Dang it, Josh, shut up!
Oh, is that right? Well, let's see how you losers do without me. I'm out.
Well, great going, idiot. You weren't supposed to tell him that.
Idiot. I don't have to take this. I'm out.
Well, this was a disaster. And here's the rest of the outro. One you may know. Also, let us know how we're doing. Make suggestions for the podcast. Leave us a comment. Heck, send us an email. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time on the Bottle of Pop Culture podcast.